Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, August 21st at 7 p.m. This is our regular session, and our first item of business is to establish the quorum, which we do have. Two members of our council members are not able to be with us tonight, but we do have the quorum. Our next item of business will be an executive session, and as I've explained to some of the audience members, we often have this at the end of a meeting, but tonight we will be having it at the beginning because out of that session there may be some legislation that will come forward. And so right now what we'll do is we'll have that motion for the executive session. I call a roll call vote. Council members and the other people who have been designated to attend the executive session will leave. We will go to the clerks of council and council's offices down at the end of the hallway. And then we will be back into this room after that executive session finishes. We will convene again. So if I could have a motion.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss appointment, employment, and compensation for a public employee and pending litigation. All members present of council, the law director, the council president, the mayor, and Kathy Heck, the auditor, who's coming down the.
Okay.
She's coming.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for council to go into executive session. And I'll take the roll call vote. Councilmember Butler?
Aye.
Councilmember Reisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Pappy?
Aye.
Councilmember Fall?
Aye.
Councilmember McGee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And what we will do is we will go into executive session for a few moments and then be back for the rest of the business session. Thank you. Okay, we're going to that I would like to do is to amend the agenda, and I would entertain a motion for amending the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
And the purpose of this amending the agenda is to add an ordinance for first reading. So that will be the final one that we'll be reading tonight. Next item of business is disposition of minutes for our regular session held on August 7th, 2017. If I could have a motion for approval of these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And we'll consider the minutes then approved. Yes, and is there a comment? Councilmember Butler?
Thank you, President Myers. I wasn't sure if we had to vote on amending.
Yep.
We didn't vote on.
We should have voted on that. Yes, we should. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We had a motion and a second, so he's right. We need to have a vote on that. Thank you. So we're moving back to amending the agenda. We have a motion and a second for that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay. It's Councilmember Pappy. We did approve the disposition of the minutes, and we'll now move on to communications. Are there any communications from any of the council members tonight? I do know that I shared with council members somebody who was not able to be with us tonight in the audience but wanted to convey her support for the pilot parking program. And I did forward that email to all council members. Okay. And then we'll move on to communications, reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason? Okay. Auditor Hecht? No report. Mayor Patterson?
I have a few things to communicate. First of all, just some updates. Lamar Avenue planned water outage, which will be tomorrow. And it's from 8 a.m. until the work is completed. So up on Lamar on the south side of the city. Another update in terms of streets is that East Union Street will be open to two-way traffic between University Terrace and Stewart Street. And this is, I believe, going to be happening on Wednesday. And McKinley Avenue, yay. McKinley Avenue will be opening up to traffic Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m. So Wednesday, August 23rd. The roundabout is already open. McKinley Avenue will be opening up just in time for move-in. And I believe council may be aware of this, but the city of Athens has received $311,000 for the Northwest Bike Path Spur Phase 3, which will send the bike path from Armitage Road on up to University Estates. Again, that's a 95% match for that particular project. Again, a long waited for, something that council, in their wonderful foresight back in 2000, said that bike path spur should go from West State Street Park up to.
Can we have a comment from Councilmember Fall?
And also, I think the long-term plan is to connect it with the Moonville Rail Trail, and that will help enable regionally wide bike access someday to Washington, D.C. Long-term plan.
The city, we received a letter. This came from Stephen Knopfs, Protective Services Manager over at Ohio Health, Wilderness Hospital, and it's one of these feel-good letters. It's a letter that was recognizing Officer Andy Sposter as well as Officer Justin Boggs, who helped because security over at Ohio Health or Wilderness Hospital was having trouble coaxing an individual with Alzheimer's, an Alzheimer's patient, to come into the hospital. And Officer Foster and Boggs did a fantastic job in being recognized for that in terms of talking the individual into coming into the hospital. Everything was okay, even to the point where Officer Foster while the individual's in a wheelchair being wheeled in, held the individual's hand all the way into the hospital until they were properly taken care of. We received another letter. This is, I don't know if this can be seen very well, but our fire chief, Robert J. Reimer, was recognized. He received his diploma graduating from the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program. So continuing education is always a big thing and a proper thing, and so he was recognized for having completed that particular program. And finally, with council's blessing, I would like to read something that I drafted coming from my office as it relates to the events that unfolded a week or so ago in Charlottesville. And if I may, over the past week, I have been shocked and saddened by what has happened in our country. The hatred and bigotry seen in Charlottesville represents ideologies of the past that cannot and will not be tolerated today, especially here in Athens. Those who converged on Charlottesville with their slogans of hatred, weapons of hostility, torches of terrorism, are hoping that what happened there will be the beginning of a campaign to fragment our country along religious, racial, and ethnic lines. This is so against the ideals of our ideals as a nation that people of goodwill must not remain silent. As Athenians, we have always prided ourselves in our welcoming attitude and inclusivity to all individuals, regardless of race, religion, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, or abilities. I want to emphasize that everyone is welcome here in Athens, and the city is proud of our diversity. If anyone ever feels that they have been discriminated against or made to feel uncomfortable by the rhetoric of others, I urge them to reach out to me. Outdated attitudes and views should not continue to thrive in a city so proud in its progress. The violence that erupted between the white supremacists and the counter-protesters in Charlottesville proves that divide in this country is greater now than ever. I urge citizens to reach out to each other, have open dialogue to create a future that includes all, and to begin to fix the divide right here, right now. We cannot let the hate and bigotry seen in Charlottesville set the tone for the future, set the tone for the future. As we are all human beings, we are all better than this. Thank you.
Thanks for that statement. We'll move on to the legislative portion of our business this evening with ordinances for third reading now. Ordinance 7617 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids where necessary for construction of the Water Treatment Plant Facilities Improvement Project number 307. This is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Nysel. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 7617.
Second.
Thank you. As you recall, we discussed this ordinance, this legislation in committee meeting, I believe prior to our recess. We've heard from the City Service Safety Director about the improvements. Essentially, we're authorizing her to advertise and accept bids where necessary for construction to make these improvements to our aging infrastructure. I believe this building dates back to the late 50s, early 60s. Some of the improvements also include the addition of solar panels to make it more efficient. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council members? Then we'll move forward with the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved.
Thank you.
Ordinance 7817 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids where necessary for the purchase of an educational smoke trailer for the fire department. This is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 7817.
Second.
Thank you. In speaking with our fire chief, he offered a little bit of history. This particular trailer is an educational component to our city, initially focused on elementary-age children. The hope is that the new trailer will offer educational abilities to a much wider audience. There's also an outside chance that it can possibly be used as an emergency control center, response center for special occasions, depending if we're able to also outfit it with some of those details. But in general, this is a much needed improvement. The old one has served its time well.
Okay.
The price is approximately $68,000. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and second for approval of Ordinance 7817. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved.
Thank you.
Ordinance 8017 is an ordinance vacating a portion of Moore Avenue, also known as Moore Street, between Factory Street and Roberts Alley, upon petition of the adjoining property owner, Ohio University. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 8017.
Second.
Thank you. We've talked about this several times. This sort of vacating roads is somewhat unusual, but we do it in other instances for other landowners in the city. And it will help to make their lots more compact and make sense parcel-wise so that they can go forward with their development of their medical school. Thank you.
We have a motion and second for approval of Ordinance 8017. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember McGee.
Yes, I do have a comment. I don't oppose this granting to Ohio University in theory, but I am a little bit upset at the method that was used for this. My understanding is that the prior administration and the university had entered into some sort of agreement, and at some point in time the city received some land from the university with the understanding that we would then at some point in time release this Moore Avenue property. My understanding is the land that the city received from the university was then leased out to a very good charitable organization, Habitat for Humanity is what I believe we were told. I'm not sure what kind of lease terms there are or what they are, but I'm always concerned when we're almost acting as a straw man so that another party will benefit from the actions that we're giving the university. So I think it's imperative that if this kind of activity is taking place, that if there are exchanges between the university and the city, that the city should have some real benefits from it, and that the benefits should not accrue to third parties necessarily. In this particular case, again, as I say, I'm not opposed to the university having this property because I think it's a valuable property for them, and the city will benefit from the medical school. But again, I'm concerned about the method that was used to facilitate this. So,
okay. Thank you for the comments. Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? And we'll have the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. The ordinance is approved. Ordinance 8117 is an ordinance granting variances from the Athens City subdivision regulations to Wanda Cash, 46 Canterbury Drive, to allow a minor lot split. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 8117.
Second.
This is another instance where the city looks at development put forward by a citizen, and this allows for minor variances to basically how the lot is shaped and how much road frontage it has to have for Wanda Cash to be able to subdivide. This is a fairly easy variance to put forward. We have done this before.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before we take the vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ordinance carries and the motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 8217 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 3, Administrative Provisions, to add Chapter 3.12, Efforts to Change Sexual Orientation or Gender Identity with a Minor. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall. And I do understand that we may have some members from the audience who might wish to make comments tonight. We do have the 3-minute limit. What we will do first is see if there are any questions after Councilmember Fall explains the ordinance, and then council members have the opportunity to speak first.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 8217.
Second.
I want to follow on with what some of Steve said tonight. I've been horrified by what has gone down in our country, in Charlottesville. It makes me cry in my soul. But being able to bring this forward tonight to pass represents all that is good in Athens. We're a city of love and tolerance, inclusiveness, and community. And this is one more example of how we, as the community of Athens, get together and try to change things for the better of all of our citizens. I'd like to point out that this particular, actually 3 of the ordinances that are coming tonight for various readings were introduced by people from the public. The parking permit, and this was brought forward by people who wanted to see change. That's the essence of democracy. So I'm just more than honored that they came to me to help pass this important piece of legislation. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any additional comments or questions from council members? Okay. And is there anyone from the audience who would want a few minutes to speak to this? Okay. Generally here in support of this. We recognize your presence here and thank you for it. Okay. All right. So we do have the motion and second. We'll now take the vote for approval of Ordinance 8217. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to Ordinance 8317. This is an ordinance authorizing pilot residential parking permit, a pilot residential parking permit program. And this is introduced by Councilmember Patrick.
Thank you, President Nisley. I move to adopt 8317.
Second.
As everyone knows, and as many people here in the audience know, this is something that we have discussed at length for quite some time. It is a pilot project. The streets are listed within the ordinance. And it is moving forward looking at sustainable efforts with our parking in our community. I have said all along that I strongly believe that the 24-hour parking ordinance, once it was enforced, living in a closed-in neighborhood, has helped tremendously with the parking issues that used to exist. But as with any ordinance, I think it's also a living, breathing document. And we've learned some things over time with the parking in our community regarding those in our areas, older neighborhoods especially, where homes were not built for 2017 standards or upgrades as whatever. So we have many homes, many people here who signed a petition brought forward by a citizen that they have no parking and they're not going to get a curb cut from the service safety director, or even geographically could that even happen. So through many months and many discussions, the ordinance as it exists we've come up with this ordinance. And the main issue is that if you are deemed by our city administration as having 0 or only 1 parking spot on your property, you are able to buy a permit for $25 that will be in your vehicle. You'll have instructions on how to do that, and you will be able to park your car for 72 hours. So that is the basis of the ordinance.
Thank you. We have a motion and second. And do we have any additional comments or questions from council members? Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Esley. I would like to thank Ms. Kornansky as well as Councilmember Pappy for keeping us on task and being diligent. I've been approached over the years by a number of Westsiders who have expressed concerns regarding this very issue and are excited and encouraged about change. So I support this. I want to echo again that it's a pilot program. It allows us to collect data. It allows us to take a look at what's working, what's not working, and then if we need to make changes, we can do so after we gather more information. Thank you.
Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback on this. In September, we are going to be launching our comprehensive planning process with some visioning meetings and a lot of other educational and planning activities afterwards. It's like a fun year for everybody where you have lots of interesting things. One of the major parts that we're actually already collecting data on is parking, both uptown parking and close-in neighborhood parking, so that when we go into these various visioning and working groups with our comprehensive planning process, that parking will very much be part of the mix. And I'm hoping to work with the neighborhood associations so that neighborhoods, for each different neighborhood, they'll have different parking solutions that pay attention to their neighborhood needs and desires about it, and so that we can have a comprehensive plan in a year or two. And this, as I said earlier, this is an awesome way of showing that citizens can come forward and help move our city forward, and it's great. More citizens should do it. So,
thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Councilmember McGee.
Thank you. I would like to say that I'm not opposed to this at all. As a matter of fact, Joan persuaded me months ago as to the need for this particular program. I was given a second incentive to reconsider this when several weeks ago we had a young man up here and asked that this program be extended to his streets, and he raised the issue basically of equal enforcement of the parking issues. I tend to personally think that it would be much more appropriate to make it a 48-hour citywide parking regulation rather than 24 hours. I think the 24 hours is unduly burdensome on everybody. So I would much rather prefer to see a 48-hour citywide, but that's not on the table right now, and I hope people will realize that. So at this point in time, again, I'm not opposed to this. I think there are some other ways to deal with things, and I'm actually eager to see if this program, the pilot program, works after 6 months to a year, whether it would be suitable then for other areas, because I think you've done your homework, and I applaud you for all the work you've done in presenting this to council. So thank you.
And I know we have a few people in the audience here tonight who have also worked on it, and does anybody want to make a comment at this point? Okay. All right. Yes. And just need to come up to the podium and announce your name and sign in for us. And then once you've signed in, so we have that for the record, then the 3 minutes will start.
hearing my statement tonight. I am speaking personally as a resident on this issue. So when I first moved to Athens in 2015, for my job at the health department, I knew I wanted to live right downtown, particularly because I wanted to walk to work. And in the years since, I've lived on both West Washington and also West State, though I know West State is not included. But I've had to personally experience moving my car daily for about a year and a half. Though I've always been thankful to live in Athens, and I came here intentionally and loved being here, I felt like my schedule revolved around moving my car. It greatly impacted my quality of life, particularly if I wanted to feel free to go somewhere, if I was sick, or maybe just on Saturday morning when I didn't want to go move my car and just relax. It certainly caused me to take car trips, whereas I would have otherwise biked or walked places. Because I needed to move my car daily, walking to work was no longer an option that I would have liked to have had, even though I lived very close to work, practically around the corner. So I now live on Central Avenue and have never been so happy and thankful to have a driveway in my life. I definitely don't take that for granted anymore. So now I actively commute. I walk to work sometimes, I bike to work, and I'm very thankful to have that opportunity. Professionally, I've learned in public health that policies, systems, and environmental change that allow people to make the healthy choice, the easy choice, really matters. In terms of transportation and community, there's a quote that has stood out to me, and that is, design for what you want. If you want healthy, active citizens, we must create environments that support them being that. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Thank you. We'll now have the vote for Ordinance 8317. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The ordinance is approved. All right, we'll move on to Ordinance 8617. This is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA state project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for maintenance resurfacing on State Route 56 and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. The ODOT, the state of Ohio, approached Athens. They're going to be paving State Route 56, and of course we have a portion of State Route 56 within our city limits, and this is basically authorizing for our 20% share, which is approximately $37,500 for that paving project.
Okay. So we have a motion.
Second.
And second, okay. And do we have any other comments or questions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have several ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 8717 is an ordinance authorizing the adoption of an agreement with the Athens City Firefighters, Local 3351, and Ohio Council 8, AFSCME, AFL-CIO, concerning wages and working conditions. And this is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Councilmember Reisner?
Nothing new to report on.
No suspensions, okay. 8917, the next ordinance is an ordinance amending Ordinance 6917, authorizing the payment of a prior year expense and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. We'll now move on to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 9017 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application to participate in the 2017 State Capital Improvement and/or Local Transportation Improvement Program for Issue 1 funds to execute contracts as required and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
I don't know that I really need to say anything tonight. We discussed this at committee. I guess I would ask if any other council members have any questions.
Doesn't appear so. So it's a standard authorization
Correct.
to enter into applying for issue 1 funds that
Correct.
would benefit the streets. Okay, great. Ordinance 9117 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 7616, authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA federal local let project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for improvements to US 33 and East State Street. This is project number 288, and declaring an emergency. Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. Again, this is sort of an add-on to what has already been, we've already discussed for our 33 interchange project there in paving. It's just cleaning up the language with the state.
Okay. All right. Ordinance 9317 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA state project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for guardrail replacement and upgrade on State Route 50 and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. Again, this is the state paying 100% of the cost within our city limits, but they need basically our go-ahead to improve the guardrails on that section of 50.
President Isley?
Yes. Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. I believe we accidentally skipped 9217.
We did.
We did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good call.
There's a lot of them.
Skipped it. You're kind. Ordinance 9217, excuse me, as we alter a little bit. An ordinance amending Ordinance 6717, authorizing construction and engineering services for the East State Street US 33 project, number 288. And this is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I believe that this is for the lighting, or the cameras.
That was 90, that was 90.
The one before.
That was the one before. They both deal with the cameras.
Yes.
Thank you, Clerk of Council. So both ordinances deal with the cameras on the poles.
My apologies.
You're confusing us.
So the first one, 91, authorizes the Service Safety Director to
Correct.
enter into the agreement.
Correct.
And then the second one, 9217, authorizes the construction.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, the costs are borne by the state there,
100%.
100%.
Okay. And then 9317, we have read, so now we'll pick up with 9417.
If I may.
Yes, Mayor
Going back to
Pedersen.
91 and 92.
Sure.
There was a number of questions that came up in committee, and that was about the use of the cameras. I believe that you received information on that these are purely for looking at traffic flow and weather in the area. These are not license plate reading cameras. These are not that dissimilar from cameras that you see all throughout the state. Just monitoring traffic flow in a particular area. And this will be the first one on our end, as I understand it, of the 33 corridor.
Thank you for that additional information. And yes, thank you for the clarification we received during the week. Ordinance 9417 is an ordinance authorizing disposal of an Athens transit bus no longer needed for a municipal purpose, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. This is a standard ordinance that we need to approve when we dispose of a bus that's no longer of city use, and it's put out to bid usually, or how do we?
I'm sorry, did we skip the guardrail ordinance?
We did. We already did that. We're all out of order here. Yeah,
FYI,
we're out of order here.
Council had questions about where that guardrail was, and you should have received, okay.
We did.
We did.
Were provided with a map.
Keep
This is to keep you on your toes.
Clearly.
And now we're disposing of a bus,
Not over a guardrail.
We're moving on to ordinance.
not over a guardrail.
No. We're moving on to ordinance 9517, which is an ordinance banning parking and closing that portion of Court Street from Mulberry to Carpenter on October 28th and 29th, 2017, in anticipation of a large number of people converging on downtown Athens on Halloween weekend, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. The next several ordinances are the necessary ordinances that we pass each year regarding the Halloween activities. This year it will be October 29th, and as usual we will close the street during the day to prepare. And we did close a half an hour earlier last year, and we will continue to do that this year. That seemed to work well for the organizers and for our city staff and for overtime rates. So we will continue that in that vein.
Thank you. Ordinance 9617, an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Section 13.04.10, which is on necessary noise for scheduled bandstand performances, posted by the Clean and Safe Halloween Committee on October 28th and 29th, 2017, Halloween weekend, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. Move on.
Ordinance 9717 is an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Chapter 11.04, vending, peddling, and soliciting to allow vending in a designated area on October 28th and 29th, 2017, Halloween weekend. This is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I actually learned something last weekend when our Halloween committee folks were here. I didn't realize that most of the vending was from outside of the city vendors. Mm-hmm. I just took note of that, mm-hmm. that it's usually, and as the organizer mentioned, our local vendors usually don't, the volume and the amount of people, they just don't usually want to be involved in. So I thought that was, I'd never known that before.
That is interesting.
So just FYI.
Ordinance 9817 is an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Section 7.05.26C, regulation of city parking garage rates on October 28th and 29th, 2017, Halloween weekend, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. So there was some discussion last weekend about the parking garage rates, and generally that's a Friday to Sunday morning rate or a one-night rate, and there was discussion about that being more formalized, and so this ordinance does that.
Okay. Ordinance 9917 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 8614, authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an agreement with the Board of Athens County Commissioners to extend sanitary sewer collection services to unincorporated portions of the county and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. President Isley, could I have a moment on this?
Yes.
Okay. I
Law Director
wanted to let the public know that I believe I have a conflict on this project. And I notified President Isley last week, and I notified the mayor's office, Paula Brand Mosley, that I believed I had a conflict. Of course. And I wanted the public to know that I've completely removed myself from any aspect of this project. I've had no discussion with anyone. I haven't had any access to any of the legal documents. I haven't reviewed a draft of this ordinance, but I want the public to know that we do have legal representation in this matter. It just isn't me because of my conflict.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. We talked about this at length last week at committee meetings, but we've talked about it even more at length because from my recollection, this has gone through 2 county commissioner people. Larry Payne was one of the people who first came. And so this has been around as an issue. And even if the county is not successful and they're part of the whole sewer thing, this will still be an issue because the EPA is concerned about leachate coming from all the failing septic systems out in this one area. So we have gone, and now it's in, after the passage of this resolution, of this ordinance, it will be fully in the hands of the county commissioners to do all the legwork that they have to do to get it done in the county. So, thank you.
And just a brief comment to thank Councilmember Fall for all the work. There were a series of meetings that she attended over the course of probably a year or so. And I do remember our health department director, Chuck Hammer, for the Athens County Health Department, coming here when we first began discussion of this. And he said that this was the single most important health improvement we could make for the county. having the sewer system out there and so we're doing something about the failing septic systems.
Thank you.
Ordinance 117 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 7, Traffic Code, Chapter 7.01, General Provisions, Chapter 7.05, Parking and Regulations, and Chapter 7.09, Penalties. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. Basically, this is updating the various chapters and sections to update for what goes on now on city streets, that they're not parking meter, they're pay stations and such. So it's basically changing definitions and language to update.
Okay. Ordinance 10117 is an ordinance amending Title III, Administrative Provisions of the Athens City Code, Chapter 3.07, Administrative Departments, Boards, and Commissions, Section 3.07.70, the Athens City Commission on Disabilities. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. We talked about this last week also. This is to increase the number of people on the Athens Disability Commission. They put forward their meeting minutes for this and the bylaw that they have established.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Ordinance 10217 is an ordinance authorizing the extension of city water service and installation of water tap beyond the corporate limits on Peach Ridge Road, introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Isley. We discussed this at committee, and council members are in receipt of a map regarding the property and the road. There is a city water line nearby which passes in front of the said site. There is no current existing water line or service available from a rural water system provider. The line has been tested according to Public Works at 45 PSI, well over the minimum of 20 PSI for domestic service pressure. And this would be for a limited single residential domestic tap. I will note that one of the sections indicates that the water service shall be governed by the same rules and regulations which govern said services to residents of the city, and that the rate charged for said services shall be the city rate plus 20%. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance 10317 is an ordinance amending the 2017 appropriation ordinance. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me to read Section 1 of the proposed ordinance. The 2017 appropriation ordinance 15016 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $10,000 to General Fund Municipal Court 101.106 TC 300 for Public Defender contract, $38,000 to Transportation Fund 214 TC 500 to purchase a bus to service the University Courtyard from Ohio University, and $32,000 to Judges Computer Fund 230 TC 600 to transfer into the Clerk's Computer Fund 231 for computer supplies and maintenance of the court's case management system in accordance with Ordinance 08817 and increasing the total appropriations by said amount.
Okay. We now have Ordinance 10417. It was one that we amended the agenda for. And this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to hire a director of Arts, Parks, and Recreation at a pay rate of 50% through the assigned pay grade. And this is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll read Section 1 of this proposed ordinance. In accordance with the non-union personnel fringe benefits package, Ordinance 15216, Section 21C, compensation, Athens City Council does hereby authorize the mayor to hire a director of Arts, Parks, and Recreation at a pay rate of 50% through the assigned pay grade.
Okay. Thank you. Now we have a resolution for first reading. This is R 0817, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. And this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. We do this every year, and I'll give my standard explanation talk here. As many people may not realize, the city of Athens does not have a property tax. The county has a property tax. But we do have a large portion of area that the county would normally be servicing in terms of road repair and bridge repairs and so on, because we occupy most of Athens Township and part of Canaan. So consequently, the county reimburses the city for our share of repairs to those streets and bridges and so on, just normal maintenance. So a resolution has to be adopted by council, and it'll go over 3 readings. This is just the first reading. And I think each member has a copy of it on their disk drive. It's several pages long. Let me just read this. Whereas the council, in accordance with the provisions of law, has previously adopted a tax budget for the next succeeding fiscal year commencing January 1, 2018, and whereas the Budget Commission of Athens County, Ohio, has certified its actions thereon to this council, together with an estimate by the county auditor of the rate of each tax necessary to be levied by this council, and what part thereof is without and what part is within the 10 mil limitations. Therefore, be it resolved by the council of the city of Athens, Ohio, that the amounts and rates determined by the Budget Commission in its certification be and the same are hereby accepted, and so on and so forth. But we have the schedules here, Schedules A, B, which shows the amounts of money that we will be receiving from the county. For our general fund, Athens Township, we should be receiving $843,523. From Canaan Township, $36,330 for a total of $879,854. That's the resolution as it stands.
All right.
I hope everyone understands. It's kind of convoluted, and
Good job.
it works.
It does.
They can email you if they have questions.
Yes.
We'll now move on to announcements and other business. And I know that we will want to find out.
Yes,
Councilmember.
I have a question concerning something that's been kind of just raised recently. I've mentioned several times I'm quite concerned with the danger to the student citizens who walk on the Rock Riffle Road from the bridge. And I believe that something has to be done or somebody's going to be injured, so either some warning lights or some walkways or something. And I've just realized that the city does actually do some work outside the city limits, apparently, since we're being reimbursed for that. And my understanding is the administration has told us that this is past the city limits, the bridge, and we can't do anything about it. And I'm asking the administration here to do something that would allow the protection of the citizens on that Rock Road area that goes to Bong Hill. This is absolutely ridiculous that nobody is coming forward and getting this done. And we're using the excuse, hiding behind the excuse, it's not our property. So if we're doing it elsewhere, then I suggest that somehow the administration or somebody in the administration should be answering that question for council. Why aren't we doing it?
So you,
in just a second, we have a suggestion from Councilmember Fall.
Thank you.
It's a possibility.
I think one thing is the tax levies are not necessarily that we're doing work outside of the city, is that we're doing work on county property, county and township level properties inside the city. That they should be working on, that's what you said. Is that true? Okay, so it's not us working out, but what you have raised this point several times, and what I would suggest for council, and I will bring forward, with the help of you, a resolution to ask specifically for the county to look at this along with the township.
Thank you.
Is that Athens Township, Rock Riffle Road? Does anyone know what
not sure.
township?
I believe it is.
Athens
I
Township.
believe so.
We can get Steve Pearson in here.
Let me just share with you that I have spoken to the county commissioners one-on-one and passed on your concern, but the city doesn't do work outside the city proper. You know, the water tap that we were just discussing was authorization for that water tap to occur, you know, by whoever wants to develop that piece of property. The other thing I want to share, and this is a good educational moment, that I just looked it up earlier tonight before coming here, and that is that as someone ascends to the top of Bong Hill, you're ascending to the top of private property. That parcel of land that people frequent is Harmon Farms, and I would just caution anyone who wants to venture to the top of Bong Hill, you know, that there is potentially a trespassing that's taking place onto that property. I've not been up there in many, 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 many years.
Well, good.
But that said, there is the Ohio Department of Transportation right-of-way through that area as well. But again, listening to your concern at the last, you know, committee meeting that we had, I did share that with two of the county commissioners. But it is their property. I mean, the city doesn't have the right to go out and start now building a sidewalk on county land.
I understand that. I just, again, I really want to emphasize that this is incredibly dangerous. I mean, I have just last night drove by and noticed that the mowing is forcing students onto the road as traffic is coming, and I appreciate your response.
And I appreciate the announcements. We'll try and work cooperatively. It sounds like we might, and I appreciate your making the comments to the commissioners. And this is announcement, so if we get into any further discussion, we'll reserve it for a committee meeting night. Okay. Announcements for committee meetings next week. Do we have any that need to meet?
Finance and personnel.
I've not been told of anything for transportation.
Do you know of service safety? You're not aware? Yeah. Well, please inform the clerk of council and any necessary documents that we need to have with that. We appreciate it by noon on Wednesday, if that's a possibility, to let us know so we can get the agenda out in time to the public. We have a motion, we have our July auditor's statement, and so I would like a motion to accept those.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved. And we now have an opportunity for citizens to speak.
Business.
Other business, yes.
Art bench.
Other announcement.
Our art bench. The motion to accept the AMAC.
Correct, thank you. Last week we had a presentation from a group that has been working with Athens Conservancy to develop a park bench. And that group has also been working with the city administration. Thank you very much. And we agreed that we would have a motion to bring forward in support of that art bench project. Would you like to move that?
Yes, the AMAC has put forward minutes for their recommendation. I move that we accept AMAC's recommendation for the art bench. Let me just say quickly, I've been part of the art bench from the beginning. It sprung out of Athens Conservancy, but it's now a whole different dynamic range of women who are involved with this. And it's once again this essential democracy in action of people coming forward and giving an idea about doing something nice for the community because the community is so important to them. So I move that we accept the AMAC recommendations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Great. Good project. Any other announcements? Now we'll move forward with an opportunity for citizens to speak. Is there anyone in the audience? Thank you. Noah Tremblay is here. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Noah Tremblay, and I live at 7055 North Blackburn Road. Recently got a new accessibility van, and I found that some of the accessible parking spaces aren't that accessible due to higher curbs or not wide enough to let the door open. The door automatically opens to let my ram to deploy. I just thought you should be aware of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tremblay. Duly noted that we can work with administration to see what has to be done to correct that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noah.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak tonight? Okay, if not, then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We're adjourned at 8:28 p.m. and we'll see you next Monday night. Thank you.